Hey, it's Lauren and welcome back to my craft room. Today I have a really fun card using some of the new products from Fawn's summer release. As soon as I saw the Build a Castle, I immediately thought of the castle that Mario reaches when you play the Mario Nintendo games, and I made this card. It was a lot of steps. So this video is kind of long and I did speed up a lot of my distressing. I did all my coloring and cutting off camera because there are just so many steps to this card. But it came out exactly how I imagined. So I'm really excited to share it with you today. Yeah, I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comments what you think. I also want to know what your favorite video game is or was, depending on if you still play games when you grow up. I had a Sega Genesis where I played Sonic and I played, I think it was Echo the Dolphin and Jurassic Park, and I had an Aladdin game, and then I upgraded to PlayStation and I had, what was that dragon's name? Oh, that's gonna bug me. The purple dragon, Spyro the dragon. I knew like how to find every single thing on the first level, like all the was like coins or rings or something. I don't know, but I knew I could beat the first level perfect because I would just play that level over and over again. And then I got Tomb Raider because it was cool, and I didn't like that you had to shoot the dogs in the game, so I didn't play that game either. But anyway, I had a Nintendo at my grandparents' house, a Game Boy, and I would play Pokemon and Mario games. So when I saw the castle, I knew I just had to make this card, and I'm so excited to share it with you today. I hope you enjoy it. I will have a list of all the supplies throughout the video as well as in my description below, so check it out, and I hope you enjoy. First, I wanted to find a brick pattern to print out on some cardstock. I don't have a stencil or a stamp or die cut that's a brick pattern, and I wanted it to be smaller anyway, because if you look at an image of the castle from the game, it is a smaller brick pattern, and my castle, you know, is a little smaller. So I wanted to make sure that the design I picked will match the die and be an appropriate size for the castle. So I found this printable online. I just searched free brick printable, and I'm printing it out from my printer and printing it out on a brick colored cardstock for my stash. I don't know what color or who it's by. It's just in my stash. I have all my papers in rainbow color, and I probably should have been better about putting what was what. But this is just from my stash. It's probably Stampin' Up! Color. And I die cut the Build a Castle die, and I did all of the pieces. I wasn't really sure how I was going to do the layout, so I thought I'm just going to cut everything out. And I like to distress the edges to give a little dimension to the cards, to different pieces of cardstock. I don't like that flat edge, so I'm using chili pepper ink to distress all of the pieces of the brick castle. I, again, don't know exactly how I'm going to lay everything out, so I distress all the edges regardless if they're going to be covered or not. A little fun fact about the Post-it notes I'm using, I'm pretty sure they're about as old as I am. They're from the 80s, and they have the really awesome like teal and pink colors. Yeah, I just think they're fun. I'm gonna set all these pieces aside because I have a lot more die cutting and distressing I need to do. The next pieces I cut out are the black window and door for the castle. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do the door yet, so I cut an extra piece. The next steps are stamping and coloring my images. I made my Mario using a planet from Out of This World to make his hat, and the little boy from Screen Time stamps. My husband told me that his hat looks like a yarmulke, and now I can't get that out of my head, so maybe freehand his hat if you draw this in the future. My Bowser is made out of the new little dragon stamp, and I'm also using the shell from Critters of the Sea Turtle. And my Princess Peach is from the new Tiny Fairy Tale stamps. No modifications are needed for her. She's pretty close to how Princess Peach looks. After you're done coloring, and I want to stress this is after you're done coloring, you can use a Sharpie to make the extra lines on the images. And the Sharpie is an alcohol ink, so if you're using alcohol markers to color in your images, it will bleed. So I'm just showing you where I have my outlines to create these characters, but you'll definitely want to do these outlines after you're done coloring. So I modified the shell. I made it a little smaller to put on Bowser's back, and he has two different colors on his face for the green and kind of like tan face color. So I drew a line that kind of followed the image that I saw online and drew his collar. He does have like shoulder and wrist collars, but I just did a neck collar. And for Mario, I drew in his overalls, his large nose and mustache. And then I did forget to put that I had to make his head a little smaller to fit under his little hat. So you will need to modify his hair and head a bit. So now moving on to my background, I cut a piece of craft paper and I'm just stressing it with dough ink. I use the largest of the slimline dies as well as the simple hillside border to create kind of a hill for this part of the background. I'm going to set that aside and now work on the grass part of my background. Using the same dies as well as the Slimline Stitched Hillside Borders, I'm creating my grassy path. A lot of images I found of the video game is kind of like a dirt rocky ground with grass on top and Mario runs on the grass. So I'm trying to create that effect using these two color cardstocks. I distress the grass of my background in freshly cut grass ink. Here are the two pieces layered so you can see how the grass is creating a path on the background to the castle. I also want to make sure what I cut lines up to the door pretty well. Next I'm going to work on my sky, and that's just using the largest slimline border, and I'm using mermaid ink to distress the edges of the background. I also use my brown hillside to see how far down I need to distress the edges of the sky. The last part of my background is using the Puffy Cloud Border dies, and I use it in white and pixie dust sparkle cardstock. I like to layer my clouds with the sparkle. I think it's kind of fun to have that little surprise element. And the last of my stamped images is from Gnome Sweet Gnome. I'm just using the little toadstool as is because I think it's cute and I don't need to modify anything. A major part of the Mario games is jumping through different type of pipes, so I wanted to cut a couple pipes to place on my card. I'm not really sure how many I'm going to use yet, but I wanted to have two in case I need more images to fill the background of my card. The dimensions of my pipe are 1 inch wide by 1.5 inch tall, and I cut the top parts of the pipe to be 1/4 inch tall and 1.25 inch wide. That way I could layer them to create the pipe. I also distressed the edges in the same color, freshly cut grass. Once all the pieces are distressed, I glue them together and I think they look really cool. They look like the pipes from the game. Finally, I know I need some floating bricks, so I'm cutting some of my leftover brick paper into bricks that are 3/4 inch. I cut 2 of them to create a set of 3 blocks, with the middle block being in a yellow cardstock that I'm going to freehand draw a question mark on. I'm using a pro marker in the color that looked the best to me to create the question mark, and I tested out a few times to make sure I could draw the question mark that I see in my image for the blocks. I'm also going to use a black Sharpie to create a shadow, as you can see from the image from the actual video game. Now that I have all my pieces cut, I want to show all of the different pieces that go into this card. There's quite a lot, but now is the best part of finally putting this card together. First, I'm going to glue the craft paper and layer on top the green path. I'm gonna add my castle, but first I want to get my clouds placed on because the castle will overlap a little. I'm gluing the sparkle cardstock directly onto the base, and it ripped a little. I was really bummed, but I knew I could fix it with some extra glue. The white puffy clouds are going to be adhered onto the card using dimensionals or pop-up squares. Now it's time to glue the castle together, which I think was my favorite part about making this card. I was so excited to see how this castle came together. And as it did inspire this whole card, it was really rewarding to see this part of my card come together. I did watch the Fawn tutorial of how to put the castle together, so I really recommend checking out their video if this is your first time putting the castle together. To put the black window in, I just used a piece of Scotch tape on the back so it would fit into the window and stick. I'm adhering Princess Peach on with some dimensionals, so I need to pop up that part of the castle as well. I also recommend that you know which part is which of the castle before you put the pop-up on, as you'll see in just a second. I realized that I put the wrong one in front of Princess Peach. Luckily, it was easy to peel off and I didn't damage my card. And since I had to pop up that part of the castle with Princess Peach, I decided to pop up the rest of those small pieces of the castle. I had thought maybe of having Bowser coming out of the castle door, but then I decided to just use one black piece of the castle door to create my castle. I thought it looked the most like the video game, and so decided to just keep one door. I lined it up so my path would go to the door using wet glues, which gives you a little bit of time to find the right place for your piece before fully sticking. I also used dimensionals to pop up Bowser and set him in front of the castle. Ultimately, I choose on one pipe because I do have a lot of images for my card. I want to make sure I show those 3 blocks and have room for Mario and the little mushrooms. So I decide on one pipe. I use pop-ups for the different blocks because they are floating and I want them to look like they're floating on the card. I realized that I never did distress my 3 little blocks, so I'm using chili pepper and sunflower ink to give a little bit of color to my 3 blocks. Finally, it's time to glue Mario to the card. I pop him up and glue one of the toadstools to his lap. It looks like he's about to eat it so he can become bigger and beat Bowser. Finally, I use my white gel pen to add some light and dimension to the card. I use it throughout different spots to where I think light would hit the different pieces of the card, as well as trying to make things look more round. I also draw in the little white spot where there should be also an M for Mario on his hat, but I went with just the white spot. We can't forget Peach's little blue amulet on her dress, so I'm using stickles in a bluish color to put a small dot on her dress. Finally, I need to make my card base. I'm using just a really thick white Nina cardstock. I believe it's 110 pound, and I'm cutting it down to 8.5 by 7 and then scoring at the 3.5 to create an 8.5 by 3.5 card, which is the size of the Fawn Slimline die. I use wet glue and a corner of my cutter to line up my card. Again, the wet glue gives us a little wiggle room to make sure that the card is perfectly aligned. And here is the final result. I hope you liked this card and enjoyed watching me put together, and I hope that it inspires you to create it yourself. I really love this card and I can't wait to send it out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to click subscribe and check out some of my other videos that I have on my channel.